They say money doesn't change people, it reveals them. This is True Voice. If you're watching this, subscribe, and let me know where you're watching from. Because stories like this remind us that sometimes, the people we raise are the ones who teach us what love truly costs. Helen Ward had lived her life in simplicity and grace. She was a woman of patience, the kind who believed kindness could mend almost anything. When her husband died young, Helen poured everything she had into their only daughter, Isabel. She worked as a school secretary by day, a bookkeeper by night, and still found time to braid Isabel's hair before bed, whispering stories of courage and forgiveness. 4 years they were inseparable, mother and daughter, bound by love, laughter, and shared survival. Helen's greatest joy was watching Isabel bloom into a confident young woman, the kind who walked into rooms with light in her eyes and purpose in her step. Helen used to say, "You'll go farther than I ever did," and Isabel always smiled, promising to take her mother with her wherever life led. Then came the letter. It arrived on a quiet morning. Thick paper, official seal, the kind of envelope that carried both fortune and heartbreak. Isabel's estranged uncle, a man Helen hadn't spoken to in decades, had passed away, leaving Isabel his entire estate. $33 million. Helen read the words twice, unable to breathe. She wept, not for the money, but for what it meant. A second chance, a blessing her daughter had earned after so many years of struggle. But blessings can turn to poison in ungrateful hands. Within days, Helen began to notice changes. Isabel's tone hardened. Her visits became brief, perfunctory. There were designer bags, new cars, parties Helen only saw in photos online. When they spoke, Isabel's words were efficient, impatient, as if her mother were a meeting she couldn't cancel fast enough. Helen stayed quiet, choosing understanding over confrontation. That's what mothers do. They hope love will outlast disappointment. Then, one afternoon, Isabel appeared at Helen's modest home with a bright smile and a strange tension in her eyes. "Mom," she said, "I've made some decisions." Helen's heart fluttered with hope. Maybe Isabel had finally come to spend time together, maybe she missed her. But then Isabel's words landed like a stone. "I sold the house." Helen blinked. "You sold my house." Isabel sighed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "It's our house, technically. And I've already arranged a small place for you to stay, near my new home. You'll love it, Mom. It's cozy." Helen stood in silence, her chest tight. The house wasn't just walls and wood. It was where her husband's laughter still echoed, where Isabel had taken her first steps, where love had lived long after loss. "It's not about comfort, Isabel," she said softly. "It's about home." Isabel frowned. "Mom, please, don't be dramatic. You'll be fine." That night, Helen packed her things alone. No tears, no anger. Just a deep, quiet ache. She folded memories into boxes and left before sunrise. The morning air was cold and clean, the kind that burns when you breathe too deeply. She didn't look back. 3 days passed. Helen stayed in a small rented room above a flower shop, the smell of lilies clinging to her clothes. She ate little, slept less, and spoke to no one. Her phone stayed silent until it didn't. It rang late one evening. Isabel's name flashed on the screen. For a moment, Helen considered ignoring it. But something, that old maternal pull, made her answer. Isabel's voice trembled. "Mom, I need your help." Helen said nothing. "Please," Isabel continued, her voice cracking. "I didn't read Uncle's will carefully. The inheritance is conditional. It only transfers if I take care of you, my dependent, for the first year. If I don't, I lose everything." Helen closed her eyes. The ache in her chest shifted, not from sadness but from clarity. The same daughter who had thrown her out now needed her to keep what she valued most. "Helen," Isabel whispered, "please, I'll do anything. Just come home." Helen didn't answer right away. She looked out the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. "I'll think about it," she said softly, then ended the call. That night, she opened the old wooden chest her husband had built. Inside were documents neatly tied with a faded ribbon, including one Isabel had long forgotten existed, a joint deed still under Helen's name, connected to property her uncle once owned. Helen traced her husband's signature with trembling fingers and felt something awaken, not vengeance but resolve, the kind of quiet power that comes when a heart stops breaking and starts remembering its worth. She smiled faintly, whispering to the empty room, "You taught me everything I know about love, Isabel. Now I'll teach you what it means to lose it." Outside, the wind howled softly, as if carrying her words into the night. Helen closed her eyes and breathed, steady and sure. For the first time in weeks she felt peace. Because she knew. The lesson was only beginning. They say the tables always turn, but never as quietly as when the one you cast aside learns to stand alone. 3 days after Isabel's desperate call, Helen remained silent. Not a word, not a message. She went about her days in calm precision, rising early, tending to the flowers downstairs, sipping tea by the window while the shopkeeper's radio hummed faint songs of simpler times. But silence can be louder than anger. And Isabel, surrounded by everything money could buy, was beginning to hear it. Her mansion, marble floors, chandeliers, curated perfection, felt colder than ever. She hadn't noticed before how vast the rooms were, how echoes followed her footsteps like accusations. The friends who once filled her table with laughter now avoided her calls. Her fiancé, a man dazzled by fortune, had begun to look at her differently, his affection thinning each time she failed to reassure him the money was truly hers. By the 5th day, Isabel's confidence cracked. Her lawyer confirmed the truth. If she didn't fulfill her uncle's condition, To care for and provide shelter to her mother, Helen Ward, for no less than 1 year, the estate would revert to charity. No loopholes, no appeal. Isabel's composure shattered. She drove through the city that night, her designer coat pulled tight, tears streaking down flawless makeup. The roads blurred in the rain. When she finally stopped, she found herself outside the little flower shop, its windows glowing soft amber in the dark. Through the glass, she saw Helen sitting at a small table, reading a worn book, a candle flickering beside her. She looked content, peaceful. Isabel hesitated at the door, pride battling desperation. Finally she stepped inside. The bell chimed and Helen looked up, not surprised, just aware. "Mom," Isabel whispered. "Please, can we talk?" Helen closed her book gently, motioning to the empty chair across from her. "You're late," she said softly. Isabel blinked, caught off guard. "Late? For the apology I knew would come," Helen replied. Her tone wasn't cruel, just steady like a tide that no longer chased the shore. Isabel's voice trembled. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought I could handle it all on my own. I made mistakes, but I need you now. Please come back. Live with me again, just for a while." Helen studied her daughter's face, searching for sincerity beneath the panic. "Isabel," she said, "do you want me back, or do you want your money back?" Isabel froze, eyes wide. "Mom, that's not fair." "No," Helen said quietly. "It's not. But it's honest." The silence between them stretched. Outside, thunder rolled low across the city. Helen leaned back, her gaze unflinching. "I won't come back out of pity or convenience. You sold our home without a word, Isabel. You erased a lifetime for a number in a bank." Tears welled in Isabel's eyes. I know, and I hate myself for it. But please, if I lose everything, I don't know what I'll do." Helen stood, her expression unreadable. "You'll survive," she said. "You're my daughter after all. I taught you how." For a moment, Isabel thought her mother was walking away for good. But Helen stopped at the doorway, her voice softer now. "I'll give you one chance to prove this isn't about money. Come back tomorrow, not with contracts, not with lawyers. Come as my daughter." Then she left Isabel standing there, drenched in her own regret, surrounded by the faint scent of roses and rain. That night, Isabel sat alone in her car, her phone buzzing endlessly with messages from her fiancé, her lawyer, her so-called friends. She ignored them all. The reflection in her rearview mirror looked nothing like the woman she'd been a week ago. The diamonds on her wrists suddenly felt like shackles. But the next morning, Isabel returned to the flower shop. She carried no purse, no driver, no pride, only a small envelope and a heavy heart. When Helen opened the door, Isabel handed her the envelope. Inside were photographs, old ones from when they had nothing but love. Isabel said quietly, "You were right. I forgot who I was when I forgot you." Helen's eyes softened. "It's a start," she said. But as she stepped aside to let Isabel in, a car screeched to a stop at the curb. 2 men in suits stepped out, their expressions grim. One of them held a document, stamped official. "Mrs. Isabel Ward," he called. "We're here regarding the estate. There's been a development." Isabel turned pale. Helen's hand trembled as she reached for her daughter's arm. "What kind of development?" she asked. The man hesitated. "It seems the estate may have been transferred, under a surviving joint signature." Helen froze. She knew exactly what he meant. And as the rain began to fall again, washing over the moment like fate itself, Helen realized the lesson wasn't over. It was just beginning. The air thickened with rain and dread. Helen's heartbeat steadied, though her daughter's hands shook like fallen leaves. The 2 men stepped forward, their umbrellas glistening under the streetlight. "As I said, Mrs. Ward," one repeated, glancing at the document in his hands, "there's been a development. The estate transfer wasn't as final as we believed." Helen exchanged a look with Isabel, confusion on one side, calm recognition on the other. "What does that mean?" Isabel asked, her voice brittle. The man cleared his throat. "According to your late uncle's attorney, the estate's primary account lists 2 surviving joint signatories, yourself and Mrs. Helen Ward." Isabel blinked, uncomprehending. "That can't be right. My uncle would've." But Helen interrupted gently. "He did. He told me before he passed." The agents exchanged glances, uncomfortable at the sudden weight in the air. Helen's tone was quiet but sure. "He said he wanted to make sure you never forgot where you came from. So he added me, not because I needed protection, but because he knew someday you might." Isabel's face drained of color. "So, you've had access this whole time?" Helen nodded once. "Since the day you sold our home." The silence between them was deafening. Outside, thunder cracked across the gray sky, scattering the city's calm. The agents left soon after, their car's taillights fading into the rain. Isabel turned to her mother, voice trembling. "Why didn't you tell me?" Helen looked out the window, her reflection soft and distant. "Because some lessons can't be spoken. They have to be lived." The words cut deeper than any scolding could. Isabel sank into a chair, tears falling freely now. "I thought I was helping us. I wanted to prove I could take care of you. That I wasn't just your little girl anymore." Helen sat across from her, folding her hands. "You don't prove love by ownership, Isabel. You prove it by presence. You thought independence meant isolation. But look where it brought you, surrounded by gold and starving for kindness." The room grew still. For the first time in years, Isabel didn't argue. She just sat there, shoulders trembling, a fragile child hidden beneath the woman she had become. After a long moment, Helen spoke again, her voice soft as rain. You still have time to make it right. How? Isabel whispered. By remembering, Helen said. By choosing people over profit, home over pride, me over money. For the first time, Isabel reached out, and Helen took her hand. But before the fragile peace could settle, a knock echoed through the shop door. Urgent. Helen turned. Standing in the doorway was a man she hadn't seen in years. Grey suit, umbrella dripping, eyes cold with purpose. Mrs. Ward, he said. My name is Daniel Hawthorne. I represent your late brother's business interests. I'm afraid there's another matter regarding the estate. Isabel frowned. Another? Daniel nodded. Yes, there's been a fraud alert. Someone attempted to move the funds offshore under your name. Helen's gaze sharpened. Under whose name? Daniel hesitated. Yours, Mrs. Ward. Not your daughter's. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Isabel's eyes widened in disbelief. What? That's impossible. Daniel slid a folder across the table. We have documentation, wire requests, digital signatures. All traced to your mother's identification. Helen's breath caught. She opened the folder slowly. The papers were precise, official, but something about them was wrong. The signature looked like hers. But it wasn't. Someone had forged it. Helen looked up, her calm composure cracking for the first time. Who would do this? Daniel met her eyes. That's what we're here to find out. But whoever did, wanted both of you ruined. Rain lashed harder against the windows as the truth began to unravel. Isabel reached for her mother's hand again, but Helen's gaze was distant, fixed on the shadows outside the glass. Something told her this betrayal went deeper than either of them imagined. And the storm that was coming wasn't just in the sky. The rain had stopped by morning, but the silence it left behind was heavier than thunder. Helen sat by the window of her little shop, the folder still open before her. The papers inside were an accusation, cold and cruel, her name twisted into a lie. Daniel Hawthorne had returned early, his briefcase resting on the counter like a weight neither of them wanted to carry. Isabel stood a few steps away, pale and trembling, as if afraid of what her mother might say next. Helen's eyes were steady. You're sure the transfer request came from me? Daniel nodded grimly. It was submitted online with your identification. But what concerns me most is the timing. The request came just hours before the estate lawyers froze the joint account. Helen frowned. Meaning someone knew the freeze was coming. Exactly, Daniel replied. And whoever it was had access to both your personal data and your legal records. Isabel swallowed hard. But that's impossible. No one outside this family even knew about the joint account. Helen turned her gaze to her daughter, calm, searching. Did you tell anyone? Isabel shook her head quickly. No, I mean not directly. I might have mentioned something to Michael. Helen blinked. Your husband. Isabel's voice faltered. My ex-husband. We've been talking again. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Michael Ward. The same man who handled your uncle's real estate transactions. The silence that followed said everything. Helen leaned back, her eyes narrowing with quiet understanding. He always did have a talent for numbers and manipulation. Isabel's breath hitched. You think he forged your name? But why would he? Daniel opened his case again, pulling out another sheet. Because Mrs. Ward, your ex-husband's company filed for bankruptcy 3 weeks ago. Millions in debt. This transfer would have erased every trace of it. The truth struck like lightning. Isabel pressed her hands to her mouth, eyes filling with tears. Oh my God, he used me. Helen's voice was soft but steady, that same calm that once soothed Isabel as a child. No, my dear. He used what he thought was left of me. He underestimated what's still standing. She closed the folder, her fingers brushing over the false signature one last time. Then she looked at Daniel. What do we need to do? Daniel hesitated. If you want to clear your name, you'll need to testify. The investigation could get ugly. He's a powerful man with powerful friends. Helen gave a small, knowing smile. So was my husband once. And the truth still outlived him. That quiet fire in her eyes. It reminded Isabel of the woman she'd forgotten her mother could be. For the next few days, Helen worked with Daniel in silence, gathering every receipt, every letter, every record that proved her innocence. Isabel tried to help, but her guilt made her clumsy. Every time she looked at her mother, she saw the mirror of her own mistakes. One evening, as Helen sorted through old files, she found a letter tucked between the pages of her late husband's will. It was addressed to her, written in his familiar, neat script. Her breath caught. She hadn't seen that handwriting in years. She opened it carefully. Inside were only a few words. If you're reading this, something I built has been stolen. Trust the one who sees beneath the gold. Helen frowned. Beneath the gold. The phrase lingered, heavy with meaning. She turned the letter over, and noticed a faint golden imprint on the corner. Not ink foil. The kind used on business seals. Her pulse quickened. She reached for the estate papers, and there it was. A small golden crest embossed on the fake signature page. It wasn't from the bank. It wasn't from the law firm. It was from Michael's company. Helen stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Isabel looked up from the counter, startled. Mom, what is it? Helen's voice was low, firm, and calm as stone. He didn't just forge my name. He forged your future. Daniel appeared in the doorway, his expression shifting as Helen handed him the paper. This is proof, he whispered. If we present this to the court, he's finished. But before Helen could speak, the shop door burst open, the bell clanging violently. Michael Ward stood there, rain-soaked and desperate, his eyes darting between Helen, Isabel, and the letter in her hand. Helen, he said, his voice hoarse, you need to listen to me. It's not what you think. Helen didn't flinch. Then you'd better choose your next words carefully, Michael, because they might be the last ones you ever speak to me. The rain began again, harder, louder, as the three of them stood in the narrow shop, the truth trembling between them like glass. The air between them was sharp enough to cut through silence. Rain drummed on the roof, every drop echoing like a countdown to the truth. Michael stood just inside the doorway, his clothes drenched, his expression torn between guilt and panic. Helen didn't move. Isabel, trembling behind her, looked from one to the other, the man she once loved and the mother she'd betrayed. Michael's voice cracked. Helen, I swear, this isn't how it looks. Helen's eyes held no rage, no tears, only an unsettling calm. Then tell me how it looks, Michael. Because from where I stand, it looks like you forged my name, drained my account, and used my daughter's trust to do it. He stepped closer, desperate. I was trying to save us. Isabel was drowning in debt after your brother's estate went through probate. The lawyers were circling. I wanted to help. Help, Helen whispered. You call stealing $33 million helping? He flinched. I didn't take it for myself. I was supposed to move it, secure it in an offshore account until the deal cleared. But the transfer was intercepted. Someone beat me to it. Daniel's voice came cold and sharp. Convenient story. You expect us to believe a ghost stole it. Michael ran a hand through his wet hair, his voice breaking. Believe what you want, but I'm being hunted too. The man behind the deal. He isn't who I thought he was. Helen tilted her head slightly. And who was he? Michael hesitated, eyes darting toward Isabel. Your brother's lawyer. A stillness fell so deep it seemed even the rain outside paused to listen. Helen's expression didn't change, but something inside her shifted. Recognition, a faint flicker of horror. Arthur Bennett. Michael nodded. He promised to invest the inheritance, triple it in months. He said it was safe, but he lied. He took everything and disappeared. I thought I could fix it before anyone found out. That's why I forged your signature, to move the remaining funds before he did. But I was too late. Helen closed her eyes for a moment, as if the world had grown too heavy to hold. You stole from me to protect a thief. Isabel covered her mouth, sobbing. Michael, how could you do this? I did it for you, he shouted. I wanted you to have what your uncle left. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Helen's voice cut through his words like glass. Every betrayal starts with good intentions. Every thief tells himself he's saving someone. The room was silent again, except for the faint ticking of the old wall clock, marking the seconds between what was broken and what came next. Daniel stepped forward, his tone measured. We can use this, Helen. If we track Bennett, we might recover what's left. But we'll need Michael to testify. He has the communications, the records, everything. Helen studied Michael carefully. He looked smaller now. Not the charming man he once was, but a frightened boy trapped in the wreckage of his own lies. You'll help us, she said softly. It wasn't a question. Michael nodded weakly. I'll do whatever it takes. I just want this over. But Helen's gaze turned distant, thoughtful, as if she wasn't convinced. As if she could see through the cracks in his voice to the shadow still hiding behind it. That night she didn't sleep. She sat by her desk, the rain whispering against the windows, thinking about the letter from her husband. Trust the one who sees beneath the gold. She took out the crest again, the golden foil from Michael's company seal, and turned it under the lamp. For a moment, it caught the light, revealing a faint engraving beneath the gold she hadn't noticed before. Tiny letters. Date. 3 days from now. Helen's breath stilled. Meeting date. She reached for the phone and called Daniel. We found him, she whispered. But before she could say more, there was a sound outside, the faint crunch of gravel. She turned to the window. A dark car sat idling across the street, its headlights dimmed, its silhouette familiar. Michael's car. And in the passenger seat, a second figure. Someone watching her window. Helen's pulse quickened. Daniel, she said quietly, eyes still on the car. Whatever happens next, we're not the only ones looking for him. The engine roared, the car pulling away into the darkness, leaving nothing behind but the glimmer of gold under the streetlight and the echo of a storm that was far from over. The morning came gray and heavy, like the world itself was holding its breath. Helen hadn't slept. The faint engraving beneath the golden seal haunted her thoughts. The date, the mark, the proof that the betrayal wasn't over. She moved with quiet precision, her hands steady as she slipped the letter and the crest into her coat pocket. The storm had passed, but the air outside still carried that sharp metallic scent, the kind that comes before something breaks. Daniel met her at the small cafe near the courthouse, his laptop open, his eyes shadowed from the sleepless night. I traced Bennett's last transaction, he said. Offshore account, unregistered. But there's one local transfer, a meeting scheduled for tonight. It matches the date on that crest. Helen's fingers tightened around her cup. Where? Old shipping yard by the river. Midnight. Her voice didn't waver. Then that's where I'll be. Daniel looked at her, the The soft lines of her face, the quiet strength in her eyes. Helen, this could be dangerous. She smiled faintly. So is silence. That evening, the riverfront was cloaked in fog. The lamps flickered weakly against the mist, painting the docks in shades of gold and gray. Helen parked a few blocks away, her heart steady, her coat pulled close. She wasn't here for revenge. Not anymore. She was here for truth. From behind a rusted container, she watched as two figures stepped into the open. Arthur Bennett, unmistakable even beneath the years, and Michael. Her breath caught. They shook hands like old friends. Bennett's voice carried faintly through the fog. You've done well, Michael. Once the wire clears, no one will trace it back to us. Michael's tone was colder now, stripped of guilt. What about Helen? She's suspicious. Bennett chuckled, low and dismissive. By the time she finds out, we'll be ghosts. Helen's world tilted, not with rage but with clarity. The pieces fit too perfectly. The forged documents, the missing millions, the car outside her home. Michael hadn't been a pawn. He'd been a partner. Her eyes blurred for a moment, not from tears but from the sting of understanding. She stepped back, heart hammering, the metal beneath her shoe creaking just loud enough to draw Michael's attention. He froze. Their eyes met through the fog. His widening in shock, hers narrowing with quiet resolve. Helen, he called out, his voice trembling slightly. What are you doing here? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Bennett turned, his face pale. You brought her. I didn't. Michael started, but it was too late. Bennett reached into his coat, pulling out a briefcase. She's seen too much. Before anything could unfold, headlights cut through the fog. Daniel's car. He jumped out, shouting. Police are on their way. Chaos erupted. Bennett bolted toward the docks, the briefcase clutched tight. Michael ran after him, shouting something Helen couldn't hear. Daniel grabbed her arm. We need to go now. But Helen didn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on the shadows of the two men disappearing into the mist. No, she said softly. This ends tonight. She followed, her footsteps echoing over the wooden planks, her heart calm, her voice steady. Bennett's figure vanished into one of the storage units. Helen reached the door seconds later, just as Michael caught up, grabbing her wrist. Don't go in there, he hissed. She met his gaze. You've already taken everything, Michael. What's left to lose? He hesitated, his grip trembling. You don't understand. He's not just a lawyer. The door burst open from inside. A blinding flash. Sound like thunder. Helen stumbled backward as Daniel pulled her to cover. When the light cleared, smoke poured from the unit. The briefcase shattered on the floor, papers scattered, burning at the edges. Michael was gone. So was Bennett. Only the gold crest remained, blackened, half-melted, still glinting faintly in the firelight. Helen stared at it, her breath coming slow and even. The truth had cost her everything, but it wasn't over. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. We'll find them, he said quietly. Helen didn't answer. Her eyes stayed fixed on the smoldering crest, the last mark of betrayal, the last whisper of the life she'd lost. Somewhere out there, the men who stole her family's legacy were still running. But they'd made one mistake. They underestimated a woman who'd already survived being thrown away. And when the truth finally caught up with them, she would be the one holding the light. As the fire hissed and the river swallowed the fog, Helen turned to Daniel, her voice low and steady. Call the police, she said. And tell them I know where they'll run next. Daniel looked at her, confused. Where? Helen's lips curved. Not a smile but something colder. Home. By dawn, the fog had lifted. The river was calm again, as if the night before had never happened. But Helen knew better. Some storms don't end when the sun rises. They just change shape. 2 days later, Michael's name filled the morning news. Fraud investigation. Embezzlement scandal. Bennett Law Group under federal review. The headlines painted him as a victim of circumstance, a man misled by his superior. Helen watched it all from her small kitchen table, her tea untouched, her heart strangely still. She hadn't seen Michael since that night by the docks. He'd vanished before the police arrived, but she knew it was only a matter of time. Because guilt, no matter how well hidden, has a way of finding its voice. When the call came, she almost didn't answer. Mom. His voice was weak, hollow, the kind of sound that comes from a man who's finally run out of lies. They froze everything. The money, the accounts. I have nowhere to go. For a long moment, Helen said nothing. She could hear the wind on his end, the city noise behind him, the chaos he'd created now echoing back in his own life. Do you remember, she said softly, the night you told me to leave my own home? Michael didn't answer. You said I didn't understand business. That you and your father had it handled. You told me I was old-fashioned. That love didn't pay bills. She let the words hang in the air. And now, he swallowed hard. I'm sorry, please, just help me. Her heart ached, not from anger, but from the deep sorrow that only a mother can feel when her child becomes her stranger. I warned you, Michael. Not about the money. About losing yourself. Please, he whispered. I'm at the house. I didn't know where else to go. Helen closed her eyes. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same door that had once closed behind her now waited for him. By the time she arrived, the evening light had softened the edges of everything. The roses she once planted, the porch she painted every spring. Michael sat on the steps, his face pale, his hands shaking. He looked nothing like the confident man who'd once turned her away. When he saw her, he stood, shame written across every line of his face. I never meant for it to go this far. Helen stepped closer. You meant for it to go just far enough. He bowed his head, silent. She sighed, the weight of years settling in her chest. Do you know what hurts most? Not that you took my home. Not even that you lied. It's that you did it without thinking I'd ever forgive you. Because deep down, you knew you wouldn't forgive yourself. He looked up, eyes wet. What do I do now? She glanced at the house behind him. You start over, like I did. But this time you do it with nothing, so you can learn what truly has value. He nodded slowly, broken but listening. Helen turned to leave, her steps deliberate, calm. But as she reached her car, Michael called out, his voice cracking. Mom, you were right about everything. She stopped, then looked back, her expression unreadable. No, she said softly. I was just early. 3 months later, Bennett's arrest made national news. Offshore accounts, tax evasion, decades of manipulation, all exposed. Helen's testimony sealed the case. Reporters called her brave. But she didn't feel brave. She just felt free. The house was eventually sold. Not by Michael, not by lawyers, but by her. And with that money, she rebuilt her life on her own terms. Small home by the coast. A garden that thrived under her care. Peace that didn't need validation to exist. Every evening she'd walk along the water, feeling the tide against her feet. Soft, steady, alive. And sometimes she'd think of Michael. The boy who once held her hand, the man who lost his way, and the son who still had a chance to find redemption. Because forgiveness, she realized, isn't a gift you give for others. It's the door you open for yourself. And Helen, the woman who had once been thrown out of her own home, had finally found hers again. A sleek black car approaches in the distance, disrupting the stillness. Isabella steps out, elegant yet unraveling, her chestnut hair loose, her silk blouse rumpled, eyes shadowed with guilt. The luxury of her life clings to her like armor that no longer fits. She pauses at the garden gate, unsure if she's welcome. Grace looks up, expression calm but distant, the light shifting between them. Warm gold on Grace, cool gray on Isabella. Inside the small coastal home, time seems to slow. They sit at the same wooden kitchen table where Grace once wept alone. Steam rises from untouched teacups. The air is heavy with the silence of words too long withheld. Isabella's gaze trembles. Grace's remains steady. In the background, framed photos, moments from another life, blur softly, a reminder of what was lost. The sunlight cuts across Grace's face, illuminating the fine lines of a woman who's learned that forgiveness isn't weakness. Her eyes glisten, not with tears but with understanding. Isabella lowers her head, realizing that money had built walls between them, not safety. Her reflection wavers in the glass of the window. Two women divided by choices, joined by blood. Later the door opens quietly. Grace steps outside into the fading evening light. The sky glows in soft oranges and muted blues, waves rolling gently against the shore. She walks barefoot on the sand, her cardigan drifting in the breeze. Behind her, Isabella stands by the car, watching, the cold silhouette of her figure softened by dusk. Neither speaks. The distance between them holds everything words can't. As the horizon swallows the last light, Grace looks out at the sea, her profile calm, resolute. The water reflects the golden glow around her. Warm, forgiving, alive. For the first time, peace doesn't feel like loss. If you're watching this, subscribe, and let me know where you're watching from. Your stories, your hearts, your voices. They keep this channel alive. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to comment below.